Hi, I'm Spaceboy.
And I'm Sirlana.
And you're listening to Spaceboy Universe
on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
This is Patrick Scott Spohr, and you're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
32 minutes, 21 seconds. 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Sirlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations. I am Spaceboy, and across from me is the lovely Sirlana, and this is Spaceboy Universe. It is February 9th, 2019. I've just come back from the past here, and we're on show number 3.19, and tonight's topic is the Korean War. Yes, it's a history show. Y'all guys love it when we do history, so we're here to aim to please. Hey, you can follow us on Twitter. That's at the SBU Universe. Follow me. That's at Spaceboy Music, and then, of course, follow Sirlana at Sirlana. Make sure to hashtag your tweets tonight with hashtag SB Universe and hashtag Space Cadets. In addition to Twitter, you can find us all over social media. Just search for Spaceboy Universe. Hey, Space Cadets. You'll want to check out the YouTube channel. That's right. We do more than the archive of our shows there. There is video content from Spaceboy Music, video interviews, 2-Bit Gamers, and so much more. So hit that subscribe button and click the bell to be notified when new content is available. Can't catch a show live? No problemo. Take the SBU on the go with you via Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartMedia, and Spotify. Because, man, we like the broadcast. And on that magical note, let me bring in the lovely Sirlana. Good evening. Good evening.
I was posting something nice to you on Facebook.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, you'll be shocked because it's something nice.
I'm just shocked by the fact that you acknowledged me on Facebook.
Yeah, well, sometimes I forget to do it.
Well,
yeah. Let me pop my notes up here. It's got my links.
I guess according to you, you need to be on top of that so that the Facebook honeys don't,
Yeah, because they're all over you. We got to be careful about that. You're just drowning in it, aren't you?
Yep.
Let me pull my notes over to this other screen for a second. So let's see. We've got, hey, look at there, Stacy.
Is she in the old chat?
She's in Spreaker chat. Now, let's bring that up real quick. Mm-hmm. You can always join us when we're live like this in our Spreaker chat because we are broadcasting from the Spreaker application. But alternatively, if you'd like a little bit more interactive experience, meaning you'd be able to post GIFs, links, video, upload a photo that you took of yourself today, you can come over to spaceboyuniverse.com and click on our menu where we have SBU chat, and we're over there too. All we ask is you abide by the rules, no adult content, don't start harassing people, don't start bullying people, because we can kick and ban over there. Mm-hmm. So, but just, come in there, be a decent human, and have fun.
For the longest time, I've missed having this interaction with the Space Cadets because Spreaker chat, it's not as dynamic as our new chat room on our website. So I'm not saying that you should abandon. If you like doing the old chat, then do the old chat. If you like doing the new chat, do the new chat.
We're watching both chats.
Yeah, we're watching.
But if I go quiet in both of them, it's because I'm talking and we're doing the show. I'm not ignoring you. It's just I'm busy reading the notes.
And, watch out for Bev because she is really proficient in that new chat room. She's posting pictures and all that, and she's loving that new chat room.
Yeah, this is Bev's domain, the embedded chat on our website.
Oh, also, let me throw a happy belated birthday out there to one of our longtime space cadets, and I'm sending it out to K28. K28, happy birthday! I hope you had a nice, delicious vegetarian birthday cake. So, there you go. But it is good to see friends, family, and they're listening up in Dallas. And Space Sis is listening to the channel, so very good.
Well, and if you go to our other chat, this program is embedded. The Spreaker broadcast is embedded right above the chat. So if you get cut off, you can just pick up again by clicking, starting the embedded application over there.
Keep in mind when getting into that new chat, you have to sign in.
Yeah.
Because the way we have it designed now is that we're trying to keep the hobos out of there.
The people who, when you get in there, it's understood that you're going to behave. So you have to click OK. You're clicking an agreement that you're going to behave, and if you don't, Spaceboy or I can take swift action. Just saying, but. Haven't had that problem since we first started because the problem we were having was random strangers, and the SBU chat was listed in a public listing, and I got it taken out. So you don't know this exists unless we give you the link to our website. So they pretty much leaves it to only people who are listening to this broadcast or who are already fans and already part of our family. So.
I was just looking in the chat. Apparently, Martin Hogg is telling you hello, Solana.
I said hi back to him.
Okay.
I said hi, Martin.
Okay. Well, hello, Martin. Glad you could join us.
Glad he's been here last few times. That's great. Bob and Bev are in the other chat. In case y'all are wondering if y'all missed them, Bob, Beverly, and Michelle.
And if you have Facebook, the Beyond the Universe, here in chat. If you want to keep up with things that are going on, things I share out there with upcoming shows, go to Facebook and do a search for Space Cadets who like Space Boy Universe. Request to be added, and I'll approve you for adding on, and you can be a part of the Space Boy Space Cadet crew. And we'd love to have as many of y'all who want to apply. Of course, as the universe applies, the same rules apply there too as well. All right, Solana.
Are we ready to get down to business?
Yeah. Are we going to talk anything about the snapping or the?
Let's do some things. We'll save that toward the end of the banter section. Let's get into some news items first.
Okay, go ahead and shoot me.
Because we're in Texas. We're in broadcasting and living in Houston, Texas. Let's talk about this topic real quick. Texas bill would ban internet throttling in disaster areas. Just to get you up to date, there's been over 100 net neutrality bills that have been introduced in various states in America. But what they're saying is here in Texas, earlier this week, our state legislature introduced a bill that would make it a crime for telecommunications companies like Verizon, AT&T, to throttle internet services during times of disaster or in an area that's been declared a disaster. So this is Texas Bill HB 1426, and it doesn't go further to talk about net neutrality rules. It says if you're a carrier or a provider, you cannot restrict internet access in a disaster area. But it doesn't ban behaviors like throttling in other scenarios, that's what it ought to do, but they're not addressing that.
Okay, so here's what gets me about this. You have a natural disaster, right? What if it's a situation where it's not where they're throttling the internet, and it's just a part of the disaster that's happening? And
well, they would probably know the difference, but I'm saying...
Who's they?
Whoever. I don't know what authorities that be. I would say all of Houston was a disaster area, wouldn't you say? But we were still getting... if we were still getting cable, internet, and all this other stuff.
True.
So they could not throttle. Let's say they were throttling it before the disaster, and they could not do it. I guess because maybe you need that to emergency communicate. And I'm thinking they must talking about data on cell phone carriers too.
Maybe.
But this says there's been 100 other bills regarding net neutrality at the state level that's been introduced since 2017. Mm-hmm. Now that this is bubbling up to state level, it's a good sign. One guy said, he's a deputy director of Fight for the Future. We need the FCC to actually do its job and ensure these companies aren't acting in ways that put the public in danger. So, this is about net neutrality again. So I just think it's interesting that Texas came up and said, for this specific circumstance, don't even think about trying to throttle anything. So.
Well, I have a slightly varying opinion. I'm just not going to jump out there and assume that it's net neutrality. We're talking about a natural disaster, and, everybody, it's like this. I don't see there being a problem with throttling down some of the bandwidth in certain areas just so that the overall network stays intact. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I could see that that's one reason why, a network would throttle the network speeds so that it could stay afloat.
Well, we'll just agree to disagree on that one. But now for more humorous news.
Oh.
Well, it's humorous to you and I because we're IT people. Microsoft really doesn't want you to use Internet Explorer anymore.
Oh, they want you to use...
They need to tell that to my workplace. Microsoft calls it a compatibility solution, not a browser. Okay, so Microsoft almost killed off Internet Explorer 4 years ago, choosing Edge as the new modern browser for Windows 10. That's what comes with Windows 10 is Edge. Mm-hmm. But Explorer's lived on because of compatibility issues, because some people out there aren't on 10 yet, right? Mm-hmm. But Microsoft is not supporting Explorer with the new web standards. It's legacy code. This is, I guess they're going to do to it what they did to IE6. If you remember that, they actually had a formal funeral for IE6 and buried it. So Chris Jackson, a cybersecurity expert in Microsoft Windows Division, said the perils of using Internet Explorer as your default browser. He said why you shouldn't be using Internet Explorer. I could sit here and give you 20 of them without even reading this article, but, I'm not the authority. So, anyway, most of us who have brain cells are using Chrome and Firefox and Edge if you've got no other choices. But a number of businesses out there still rely on Internet Explorer because they don't have Windows 10, and whatnot. At my workplace, we're on Windows 7 Enterprise. Is that such a thing?
There are other browsers out there beyond Explorer that companies could use, but, they choose to just...
I'll have that conversation with you offline. I don't want this recorded.
Wait, what, you want to yell at me or something?
No. It's about my experiences during the day.
Well, I can speak from my experiences. I use Firefox. It's been reliable and it's a good browser. Speaking of end of life, next January 2020 is the end of life for Windows 7. They're not supporting it anymore.
Well, my workplace has a case-by-case equipment refresh.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's time for your computer to be refreshed, that all gets updated too. So I'm on the refresh. It's been 4 years. So they're going to get me yet another substandard laptop that won't.
3 to 4 years is the standardization for refreshing equipment.
So anyway, but we're still on Windows 7 as an entire campus, is what I'm trying to tell you. And it's not up to us, it's up to IT. Microsoft has tried to push businesses to improve older web apps, but admins take the easy route of using Internet Explorer in its various compatibility modes. So in 10, Internet Explorer 11 uses enterprise mode so that IT admins can add sites they want to use old versions of the web standards with. It baffles me. But the warning is Microsoft's Edge solution hasn't been good enough. They delivered Edge browser by coupling it to Windows 10 for 4 years ago, but they haven't delivered a compelling experience for consumers or business. Edge was not available in 7 or 8, Windows 7 or 8.
And you think they give it a whole completely facelift, but they've kept it looks like Internet Explorer with that icon.
Yeah. Microsoft is now building a Chromium-powered version of its Edge browser. I don't even know what I still don't want to use it. I don't care what it is. This is what I'm having to do at work. We're using SharePoint, which is a Microsoft product. It doesn't work with its own browser. It does not work. You don't get all the options you need. I have to go and work it in Firefox, where it works most of the time, and then 9 times out of 10 it's fine, and then I'll come in one day and something doesn't work. I have to go to Chrome, see if Chrome will work it, do what I gotta do, log back out and go back into Firefox with SharePoint. It's very strange, so I don't know. I think Microsoft needs to get out of the browser business. They just don't seem to be knowing what they're doing when it comes to that. And their stupid Bing.
Plus, it creates a lot of headache for the tech field.
Mm-hmm. There was a circumstance to where we were using a very specific web-based application that could only run optimally and as expected in Internet Explorer, which was like 7.
Under compatibility mode, or
no? This was like 2 versions after 6. This is like
because
8 or 9.
I would encounter a lot of businesses doing banking businesses that you'd have to set Explorer into compatibility mode for it to work.
They've done so many updates and upgrades to that particular app. We no longer have to rely on IE anymore. We can actually use a sensible browser. But
like Firefox.
Would you like to know what Sprint's doing?
What are they doing?
They're suing AT&T.
Really? What did AT&T do now?
Told some lies.
I'm not surprised.
Sprint is suing AT&T over 5G lies.
I think I've heard something about this.
This lawsuit claims false advertising and deceptive ads. You remember when they're showing the 5G
on the top?
And it's not. So Sprint's suing AT&T in a federal court over its decision to rebrand some of its 4G LTE networks as 5G E. That's the letter E.
But it
claims that consumers are likely to confuse AT&T's so-called 5G evolution network with actual 5G and will incorrectly think that their current phones support the new standard. Now, remember we talked about how they were going to, on your phone where it tells you how you're connected to the carrier, and it would say 5G, even though your phone is not 5G compatible and there's no 5G in your area. They're just trying to get you in this mindset that they're going to get 5G. It's just so stupid. I don't know how they got away with it, as long as they did. So
what they're trying to do is brainwash their customers into thinking,
as well as seeking to prevent AT&T from branding anything as 5G-E that doesn't adhere to the agreed upon 3GPP 5G specification, whatever that is. If you could use more letters and numbers to make things sound ludicrous, that would be great. Sprint also wants to seek damages due to loss of sales it claims it suffered as a result of AT&T's actions. Believe it or not. they're trying to put an injunction out there to stop AT&T immediately from using 5G branding while the case is still in court. Sprint says it surveyed their customers, and they found that 54% of them believe that AT&T's 5G logo is as fast or faster than actual 5G. So this is like a placebo effect, doesn't it? If we tell you the pill is 5G, then you're going to believe it's 5G.
Right.
So they said this blatantly misleads consumers who see that logo appear on both Android and Apple phones when they're connected on 4G. Because they don't know any better. So AT&T is using a logo as part of its 4G LTE network, and that's what we're on our carrier. Our carrier says 4G LTE or just LTE. Faster LTE Advanced and Advanced Pro technology. Now, AT&T claims that the technology offers speeds up to twice that of standard 4G LTE, but 40 Mbps speed of the tech is very similar to what they already offer and falls short of 5G. So this has just been, I don't know where they get the cojones. I really don't. I'm on Sprint's side on this one. Mobile carriers have united with their condemnation of AT&T's 5G branding. Again, this is them displaying 5G in the upper right or left corner of your cell phone, making you think you're connected on a 5G connection when you're not, because you don't have a phone that could possibly, handle it, because I don't know that they're even selling them yet, or it could not possibly be available yet, maybe. Until now, has been limited to strongly worded statements, single well-placed sticker. T-Mobile CTO said AT&T is duping customers. Verizon assured its customers it won't take an old phone and change the software to turn 4 into a 5 in the status bar because it has no meaning. So AT&T has used a similar ploy last time when carriers were tasked with rolling out next-generation mobile data, and the company decided to rebrand HSPA plus 3G technology as 4G. So you get 3G and AT&T will tell you, oh, it's 4G. Now you got 4G. Now they're going to tell you it's 5G. So they're just outright lying to you. And again, where do they get the cojones to do this? I don't know. Now, despite this criticism, AT&T CEO John Donovan was defiant when he spoke about it. He says, I love the fact we broke our industry's narrative 2 days ago. And he's dismissing the criticism coming from his frustrated competitors. Responding to the lawsuit, the CEO, Randall Stevenson, told CNBC, we feel very comfortable with how we've characterized the new service that we're launching and believe the company is being very clear with our customers that this is an evolutionary step. And they went on to say he understood why AT&T and his competitors might be angry, but he appeared to suggest that this was because they were incapable of offering the same service, which I don't think is true at all. It's not a play everybody can run. It's a play we really like, and it's a play that's going to differentiate us in the marketplace. Yeah, as big, fat liars. That'll differentiate you all, right? Mm-hmm. There's a big, long quote that goes on here about the response to the lawsuit, but I won't bore you with that. So they've been able to wave away all this criticism, but a fully fledged lawsuit, I don't see how they can dismiss that if it actually takes place. But again, man, the nerve. Can you believe it?
I can believe it.
Hi, Catalina. Hi, Dino.
Our man Dino's in there?
Yeah, he made it.
He made it. I knew I could count on Dino.
So, now, before we get to anything else, do you have a statement about this?
I usually do.
And that's the wrong link. I'm sorry. Hold on. I just copied the same link over.
I'm very, very much.
Maybe, and I'm sure you already know everything there is to know about this, so you tell me about it. James Cameron hints at potential return to Alien franchise.
Yeah, I saw that article, and
so you tell me about it.
Why not? Because he's done a return to Terminator, which will be out, I think, this summer, and so why wouldn't he revisit Aliens? And it was something in the article relating to Vandekamp. I do that.
Blomkamp?
Blomkamp.
How is that so hard for you to say?
I say it because it just gets a rise out of you, and our audience expects a certain level of angst from us. So anyway,
so I'm not to pay you any attention. Like
anyway,
normal.
could you imagine a return of James Cameron to the Aliens franchise? I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, everybody is like, Ridley Scott. I mean, get to the point. Make the connection to the Alien franchise with the movies he's put out. His focus has been mostly on the androids and dealing with that part of the universe. And people, they don't want to see that. They want to see chest bursters. They want to see aliens ripping people apart. I mean, that's what they want to see.
What point are you trying to make? One director wouldn't give you that and the other one would?
No, well, think about it. We've seen, Alien Prometheus. We've seen Alien Covenant.
That was more like backstory, and it was a little bit of jump scare.
It's been more about the androids, more in
their stories,
like David, focused on that, and
but that was sort of satisfying in a way because it was like.
Yeah,
but it's like a mystery. You're trying to solve a mystery.
But a lot of people, the fan base, want to get to the point. We want to know who's the space jockey, in the movie that Alien brings out.
Catalina just wrote, "We expect marriage, cosmic banter."
But what is one of my favorite movies?
Aliens.
And who
Not
did that?
Aliens.
I mean, I like Alien, but
Aliens was done by Cameron.
You can't have aliens without Alien. So James Cameron created Aliens, and
Cameron is coming back to the Terminator franchise, probably to end it.
Probably.
Good.
Well, the Alien or the Transformer. Sorry, robots. The Terminator franchise, I think he's kind of expecting to do a trilogy. And it takes place right after T2.
Said he hasn't expressed much of an urge to return to the Alien series, but that could be about to change.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know what's going to change is that he's going to return to Pandora, and we're going to see the Avatar series continue on, and it'll take place in the water.
So Cameron co-wrote and produced Alita Battle Angel.
Mm-hmm.
They asked a question about calling Neil Blomkamp about his rejected Alien 5 concept. Cameron's response was like, "I'm working on that, yeah." That's not much to go on, but it could literally just mean it's something he's thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Blomkamp's Alien 5 pitch would have reunited Ripley, Newt, and Hicks, seemingly retconned the controversial events of Alien 3 out of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Blomkamp revealed a myriad of concept art for the project. Despite getting a green light to develop the idea, it was later canned in favor of Scott's Alien prequels.
Right.
I don't see why Scott can't do the prequels and this dude do the continuation, but maybe have it under Scott's, supervision.
Well, the thing is that, Scott wants to dictate the foundation, if you will, and if you're doing something in the past that could...
Well, since it died, Blomkamp says, well, screw that, I'll go mess with RoboCop. That's what he said. He's just going to go mess with RoboCop.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited, but of course, you got to factor in that now Fox is owned by Disney, and so
it's got to be what Disney says, doesn't it?
Well, it's what they want to do, So it's their property now. They own the Alien franchise. So
that's weird to think that Disney owns these really dark and gritty and upsetting franchises.
The upside on that is that they have they're not going to change the rated R nature of Deadpool.
Thank goodness.
They're going to keep it rated R.
And I can see how they could work Deadpool into the MCU if he's just there kind of briefly, like in certain scenes where, he's breaking the fourth wall and they're all looking at him like he's crazy.
Right.
But he still has all that superhuman, stuff. I was just trying to check the temperature real quick.
I know there's a rumor that he might be in the Endgame movie. So, as a pop-up.
I would really like to see that. I really like to see
What,
that.
Endgame?
Well, I like to see him pop up in that. I like to see I want to see some shocking things. I want to see some things that make you jump up out of your seat and go, woo, and
Oh,
stuff like that.
make sure to bring about a box of tissues. So
Yeah, well,
yeah. So anyway, let's go ahead and take our break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into history. We're going to be talking about the Korean War. So interesting knowledge stuff to learn tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So don't touch that dial.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sir Lana.
This is author Jordan Root. You are listening to the Spaceboy Universe.
This is K28, and I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hi, y'all. This is Lori calling from Texas, and I love listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hey, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
This is Wendy. I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hey, y'all. This is Lorelai DeLille. I listen to Spaceboy Universe. Don't you? Tell your mom and them I said hi.
are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Sir Rodden.
Welcome back, everyone. Tonight is a History Channel, not History Channel, I'm sorry. I meant to say a history topic that is something that, we love history, right? It's a part of our our 6 major topics we discuss here at the SBU. And I always get a thrill out of seeing you dive into the research in this, because it's like, I didn't know about that. And that's how this connects.
That's why I like this
show. I'm glad you like this show.
Sometimes like this show.
I mean,
because it gives me the opportunity and the chance to go back and learn a topic, but for some reason or another, and this is one of them, they didn't cover when I was in grade school, high school, college. And I don't know if it's just because there's just so much history, there's not enough time to get to the 20th century. Because after World War II, that's like all the history there is, apparently, up till my time. So I had to start from ground zero, searching this topic. Now, I'm aware of the words Korean War. I'm aware it was a war. I was aware...
It's also known as the Korean conflict as well.
Okay, thank you. I was aware it was between North and South Korea. I knew there was a movie based on it, and I knew the TV show was based on the movie, and I know the show MASH was about the Korean War. And that was the sum total of my knowledge until now.
Now, any particular reason that this just stood out for you as a topic that
because I had not this in the Vietnam War, and if you're willing, I'll come back and do that one when it's time to do another history topic. I know nothing about that either, and it's kind of interesting because as we get toward the end of the show, I'll talk about how these two kind of connect in a way.
Well, this particular war definitely connects to World War II.
Sure, I mean, because I'll get right into that pretty quickly. So, but that's all I've known. And now, when I started doing the research on this, which was, I usually start on a Monday, I quickly realized there is a number of ways to come at this topic. Now, we could talk about strictly military strategy, the historical geopolitical decisions and their repercussions, a medical standpoint, because there are a number of medical progress that came out of this, innovations. We could talk about the human element as the people and the citizens that were caught in the middle of this war that suffered on both sides and at American hands, as well as communist. Or we could strictly talk about the thing that made the war last so long because they were debating over it, the prisoners of war. That's another way to come into it. And then there's the cultural significance of it all, because it led to the creation, and I'll tell you why later, of the most viewed television series and series finales in American television history. Get into that later. But as we do this, I want to fit it into the larger narrative we've kind of had going on when we do these history shows, and I think I'm going to sneeze. I apologize, I can feel it. Sorry. It's like somebody just threw pepper at me. We had talked about Nixon. We've talked about McCarthyism. We've talked about Werner von Braun, the Berlin Wall. And these are all related because they're all telling the story of World War I, World War II, and now we're coming out of World War I, and there's the McCarthyism, and there's all this communist paranoia. And we talked about that, and I thought, wasn't that a little over the top? I'm like, well, yeah, McCarthy, maybe he went too far. But now when I've looked into this topic, maybe we were right to be somewhat paranoid about communism because it was, it's pretty popular in other parts of the world. So the first thing always you have to go in a basic summary of who, what, where, when, why, etc. But I like the fact that it fits in with, we're coming out of World War II. Now, my full-time job, I work at a university. So I'm fortunate that I have access to academic documents and material and research and scholarly articles. So I was able to find things that, just to let you know, I didn't go Wikipedia this. Although Wikipedia is good for quick summaries. But the stuff that I used for research was pretty consistent. I didn't find any huge discrepancies. So one of the things I want to tell you about, and if you're listening to the show and you want to read this PDF, let me know. Email contact@spaceboyuniverse.com, and I'll share this PDF with you. There's 2 of them I've got. It's really good. It's a scholarly article written by a history professor at NYU Shanghai, Dr. Chen Jian. And he went and researched some documents where people who were, aides and people who were assistants to the leader of China and the leader of North Korea, and while they were talking to Stalin, he's got some of that back channel conversation that was made available, or somehow it leaked out over the years. And so he tells the story of the Korean War from that side, and how you get to see what a strange sense of denial and this it's just bizarre, their way of thinking. And like I said, this is part of a tapestry. These threads are interwoven. It's such a cliche metaphor, but there we are. Because we talked about McCarthyism, Berlin Wall, Werner Braun, Nixon, and all these pieces fit together as a result of one another. And here we are. We're into the Cold War now. World War II is ended. And the Korean War is probably the first big incident after World War II. So some of the key points, and I'm not going to go through a timeline here because that's easily available, that you can go find that easily. What this is, I want to share with you the things that stood out to me that I learned and is making me think, and why. Well, the basic stuff, okay. Korean War began June 25th, 1950, and quote unquote ended, and I'll explain that later, July 1953. That's almost 4 years later?
Mm-hmm.
So I see why the TV show ran so long. The actual war was a little longer than you'd want. So after World War II, we learned, because we did this show, McCarthyism, there's this general sense of paranoia about communist ideology in America. Well, we're still smarting from World War II. That's, and the Korean War is a war about ideology, political. Go ahead.
I was going to state that, we have to go back to 1948. Basically, an election was done to unify Korea, had been canceled because the Soviet Union refused to allow the UN observers north of the dividing line of the 38th parallel. And so...
Well, you'll pardon me if I kind of repeat some of the stuff you say. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Well, as you say, turns out Korea used to belong to Japan as part of the Japanese Empire pre-World War II. So after World War II, they gave it up, Japan. Mm-hmm. They said they promised that Korea would be, quote-unquote, liberated in due course, whatever that means. So after World War II, what do we do with Korea? And they let America and the Soviet Union decide on it. But Korea said, we don't want to be occupied by yet another foreign government. So, in 1945, 2 aides in our State Department decided to divide Korea in half at the 38th parallel, with Russians in the north and U.S. in the south, or at least those are the 2 countries that backed either side. So now the UN, the United Nations, did propose, well, why don't y'all have an election and see what y'all want to do? The Koreans like, no. I guess they couldn't handle an election. I don't know. But whatever, that got decided, but it still caused some disruption. It led to some acts of terrorism in Korea, all these decisions. So, depending on who you ask, the war was an attempt to unify the nation after it had been split at the 30th parallel after World War II. Now, America didn't want communism to spread anymore, so we dug in South Korea. What I found out is that this dividing line of the 38th parallel cut ruthlessly through the middle of villages, farms, leaving families stranded on one side or the other. I don't know if it's a situation where if whatever side you're on, you had to stay there like the Berlin Wall, you know? But it said it placed, and some of these are words I cannot pronounce. I'm very sorry. Pyongyang, one of the major centers of East Asian Christianity, and the Soviet-occupied sector, while many left-wing Koreans in the South found themselves living under U.S. occupation. So you've got, you know, people who toe the party line, they're fine, and there are people like who wanted more freedom stuck in the North because this was all decided and they didn't have time to figure out where you wanted to be before all this got decided. So that reminds me of the Berlin Wall situation. Okay, just want to go over some key persons in this topic. So Joseph Stalin, now he's the premier of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and he was so from 1922 to 1953. So he's over the Soviet Union. Mao Zedong is also AKA Chairman Mao. He's the founding father of the Communist Party in China, the leader, the premier. Syngman Rhee was the first president of the Republic of Korea. This is South Korea. Mm-hmm. Harry S. Truman is the 33rd president from 1945 to 53 during all this. And General Douglas MacArthur, he's the commander of the Southwestern Pacific Theater in World War II, and he led UN forces during the Korean War. So those are our major players. Now this one kind of baffled me. Syngman Rhee was an anti-communist dictator, according to History.com. And now, anti-communist dictator sounds like an oxymoron to me. Either you're a dictator or you're not. And dictator never sounds like it's something good. That's just my commentary. I don't know. Does that seem normal? Maybe that's normal. Now, Rhee had very reluctant support from America.
In fact, Truman had a major indifference to Rhee. And I guess basically removing American combat troops and all that good stuff.
So in the North, in North Korea, you got the full-on communist dictator, Kim Il-sung. And he had much more support from the Soviets than Rhee did from the capitalists. So non-communists in North Korea were removed from positions of power, and demonstrations by students were crushed by force. So if you didn't like what was going on in North Korea, you were silenced. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, south of the dividing line, Rhee moved to consolidate his power and sideline his political opponents, and fears of communism led to suppression of political protests. So I guess they had their own paranoia and probably didn't handle it in the best possible way. So I'd say there's huge mistakes on both sides from what I can understand after researching all this. So you've got this 38th parallel that's dividing North and South Korea, and there's constant skirmishes and battles and bloodshed right there. Mm-hmm. 10,000 soldiers were killed on both sides in battles before the war officially began. Now, to me, so far, it sounds like a border dispute between two dictators, but America looked at it as a threat to freedom because it was them trying to spread more communism, one more country. So here we are, America's still smarting from World War II. So it probably seems like this is all another attempt to try to take over the world by the Soviet Union because they're backing North Korea. And of course, they've got China in their pocket too as communists. So there is this general belief that there's no way America's going to get involved in this. This is a border dispute between some little countries. But in April 1950, the National Security Council said we should use our military force to contain communist expansion anywhere it seemed to be occurring, regardless of the intrinsic, strategic, or economic value of the lands in question. And I was like, whoa, that is a strong, bold statement. And that's one of the first things that made me stop and really think. That's coming from us. That's our side that said that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, holy crap. Now, I get the paranoia. I get that we just had 2 major world wars over political ideologies that don't, you know, like, you have to be stopped. No, you have to be stopped. It's just kind of crazy, these 2 mindsets that, no, we're the best, and we can't have people like you thinking you're the best, because it's basically what it is. So I'm not on board with communism either, but that statement gave me pause. Like, man, it's basically saying we don't care where it's happening. We don't care what the values of other people are in question. We don't care their economic situation or if they're our enemies or our friends. If communism comes to your country, we're going to come stamp it out. That's how I took it to me.
Well, that's true, because Truman said we couldn't afford the spread of communism, and that's why we got into this war, is because we could not have the North ran by communists.
Well, yeah, I agree, but man, that was a ballsy statement, So, sorry, I lost my place. I went and looked at chat real quick. Sorry, I can't engage because I'm busy talking. So, that was a pretty bold statement by the Security Council. But to further justify this, Truman said, quote, "If we let Korea down, the Soviets will keep right on going and swallow up one place after another." Well, I'm thinking he might have been correct. He might not have been wrong about that. So, again, I don't know. I wasn't around then. But it's another East versus West, those ideology struggles. So, North Korean forces crossed the parallel on June 25th, 1950. That's how this all kicked off, right? 4 months later, China enters this. This is a new thing I learned, how deeply involved China was into all this. So maybe we were right to stop the spread of communism because it seems like it was in more places than I realized. And what is interesting is the zealousness to which the North Korean leader believed that South Korea was undergoing some weird kind of revolution that needed to be put down. So this is what I found out. Prior to 1950, you have this really defining moment in the 20th century history, and it's big to what happened next for Korea. You have the establishment of the People's Republic of China, PRC, in 1949. That's the defining moment. So you got the Chinese Communist Party victory, which enhanced the conviction on the part of the communists and communist sympathizers throughout the world that, especially in East Asia, history was indeed on their side, regardless of the fact that Japan and the Soviet Union just lost a world war, and they were the communist ones. So, the revolutionaries in East Asia, including Kim Il-sung in Korea, were encouraged to believe that what had happened in China, the collapse of the old regime, in the face of the challenges of a violent communist revolution, could also happen in their own countries. So, when North Korean communists raised the question of unifying Korea through revolutionary war, late 1949, Stalin initially did not support their plans, even though it's all big communist hug fest, So what Stalin was concerned about was if they cross the 38th parallel, that is going to get America's attention, and they are going to get involved in this conflict.
Ultimately, the North does cross the 38th parallel and almost goes all the way down to the bottom of the peninsula.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me make this one more, and then if we have to go to a break, we can.
Mm-hmm.
So they saw the communism in China. They saw the communism was winning in China, and they thought, hey, that's looking good. So let's just unify Korea under this communist idea with Stalin's help, if I'm reading that correctly. Whereas Ri, down in South Korea, the leader said, let's march up to North Korea and liberate the entire peninsula. But North Korea beat him to it by launching a full-scale attack on June 25th. That's when the UN got involved. So if you want to pause there for...
All right. Fair enough. Very interesting topic tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll be back. Sorry, my Texas twang freaked out there. Right after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sir Lana.
Hey, Solana!
What?
If Spaceboy Universe was cheese, would you eat it? Come on now, it's a simple question.
Maybe?
SpaceboyUniverse.com.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Sir Ron.
I can't have a shirt with circus peanuts on it, so...
Tell the nice people what you're eating over there. Like, we can hear it for sure.
Sorry, I'm getting my circus peanuts on.
He's actually eating circus peanuts candy, and it's just nasty.
Mm-mm.
I'm hearing you chew in the mic and my headphones. It's just, it's nasty. It's nasty. Anyway. Wait, let me do something. I'm just curious. Nope. There are no circus peanuts gifts.
No.
They're just peanuts gifts.
But there is a picture of my bounty of circus peanuts that I took and posted to Twitter. So...
Well, okay.
It's on our wall. But, even the goat likes the circus peanuts.
Don't... Oh, Miss Michelle's here. You trying to upset her cat? Anyway...
I'm trying to train the cat.
Hop backing into this topic, serious topic. So we've just got the full-scale attack was launched June 25th, 1950, and that got the attention of some others, being the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
So the North Korean army makes it to Seoul, which is in South Korea, the capital of South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So now the battle is really engaged. So the Allies worked to just get North Korea out of Seoul, and that didn't go very well. Mainly because the North Korean army was well-disciplined, well-trained, and well-equipped, and they were ready. The South, well, the soldiers in the South Korea were frightened, confused, and likely to flee battle.
Mm-hmm.
The conditions down there were less than sanitary. It was a hot, dry summer, the hottest and driest on record. American soldiers drank dirty water from rice paddies that had been fertilized with human waste. I don't know why they did that. So, of course, I'm guessing the center of everything that went on in China is in Beijing at this time. So, orders, they say something came out of Beijing. I'm guessing it came from,
orders,
top brass up there. So, Beijing sent Chinese troops to Korea, disguised as Korean People's Army, to help the Korean communists. Now that did not really get explained, why they had to disguise Chinese troops as Korean troops.
Because, think of it this way, if they were actual military troops from China, then, it would have brought the Chinese into a war. In other words, it would have opened them up.
A world war.
Okay. Yeah, and at this time, the Chinese government was not in any kind of position. They were hurting. They didn't have money. They were, after the war.
The way that these leaders talk, they don't act like they're lacking in anything. From the back channeling I read in this
in
article.
other words, China is much different than it was then. And so you go in disguised as military personnel from that look.
One from another, I guess.
Yeah.
So we managed to get across the boundary, but we got warned by the communist leader of China, Mao Zedong, to stay away from the Eula boundary unless we wanted a full-scale war with China. So I had to go look that up, the geography, what he's talking about. So there's China borders North Korea. There's a boundary, and then part of this boundary gets made up by the Eula River, and then goes into the sea.
Yes.
Not the entire boundary, but just there's a part of it that becomes this river, and it forms part of the border boundary of Northeast Korea.
Yeah, the Yulon River dumps into the Yellow Sea.
Yes. So look at all that extra research I do for you. So the reason for this was China and Korea have communist ties that go back historically. So the Korean communists provided substantial support to the Chinese Communist Party during the Chinese Civil War, which just happened before all this other stuff. Now, Mao stated this: the unification of Korea cannot be realized in a peaceful way. The unification of Korea must be realized by using force. As for the Americans, do not fear them. The Americans will not start a third world war for such a small place. That is from this article I keep telling you about, called Far far short of a glorious victory by Qin Jin. And again, if you want any of the materials I have as PDF when I research this, because they're really fascinating, just let me know, contact@spaceboyuniverse.com, and I'll email them to you. Really fascinating. They may have my notes in it, though, so because you can make notes in PDFs. And again, this is how I learned how deeply China was entrenched in the Korean War. So, Mao and Kim don't believe the U.S. are going to get involved, and boy, were they wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So once this got underway, it had all been defensive on the Allies' side. So Korea was coming down, they had disguised soldiers, so they were on the defense, just trying to, catch up. And it wasn't really working for us. So Truman and MacArthur decide it's time to go on the offensive. That is, liberate the North from the communists. And just what little I knew from my research at this point, it sounds like an impossible task to me. Because it just seems like Korea, now with the help of China, just have limitless soldiers to throw at this situation.
But we had an ace in our sleeve, and that would be Douglas MacArthur.
Only for a little while. But
yeah, sure.
But at first, when we pushed back, it was a bit of a success. We launched this, and I do not know why I can't talk tonight. I'm sorry. I'm very much well rested, but I've had a terrible headache today. So the U.S. launched an amphibious assault. That should be A-N, not A-N-D, not that you care, babe. At Incheon.
Mm-hmm.
That got the North Koreans out of Seoul and pushed them back to their side of the 38th parallel.
That would be the Incheon landing in September 15, 1950.
You have more info about that?
Just that MacArthur, the key thing was to land in this area so that they could get into Seoul and recapture Seoul back. And it basically would cut off the North Army, and then they would be able to kind of do a left turn and go into North Korea.
Yeah, I'm just apologizing to Michelle for you scaring her cat yet again. All right, so both leaders of North Korea and China did not think we'd get involved because this was more like a civil war between North and South Korea. Well, they were wrong. We didn't want communism to spread, so of course we got involved. But Truman did not want an all-out war with China, but neither did China.
Mm-hmm.
But, they don't come out and say that publicly because that would make them look weak, I guess. They didn't want to kick off hostilities in other parts of the world because what Truman knew is if this kicked out World War III, we now have atomic weapons.
Right.
And that would just be, and now we have nuclear ones. So it just gets worse and worse. So, excuse me. Let me adjust it. But now Mao was thinking, okay, the Americans are not going to involve themselves in this civil war in Korea. We know he was wrong. Stalin eventually comes around to their way of thinking and supports an attack of South Korea, but told the North Korean leader, Kim, this: if you should get kicked in the teeth, I shall not lift a finger. You will have to ask Mao for all the help. So it's like saying, look, I'll help you out, but if you get caught, I don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's what he's saying. Because he doesn't want World War III either. I don't think he's got any resources left to fight another war. Again, this is how deeply China is involved, which I had no idea.
Right.
So he sort of gave Mao power to veto any plans that North Korea would have to attack South Korea, if he wished, but he didn't do that. So East Asian communists stuck together through this. In fact, Mao and Kim went back and forth over China's support. Mao said, I can send you backup reinforcements, but Kim says, no, we've got our own army. We've got plenty of communist guerrillas. I guess that's, guys that are already there. They'll do guerrilla warfare in the South already down there.
Right.
And they'd be more than enough against the Americans. And Kim said, don't worry about the Americans. They're not going to get that much more involved. But just in case, Mao had sent 320,000 100,000 troops to the Chinese border with Korea, ready if they needed them. So like I said, they just have tons of guys to throw at this. So they saw the defense of South Korea as blocking a revolution, a glorious revolution, probably. That's what that guy's paper was titled.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point he's trying to make this professor. It was far from a glorious revolution because nothing got resolved. So the thinking was that if America held on to South Korea, they could send more troops. Then it would be a matter of time before the U.S. made it into North Korea and then northeast China. They figured America was gonna come up to North Korea and then head into China and take over both countries. That'd have been a heck of a thing, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of China's military operation in Korea, they said that they would use volunteers, wear Korean People's Army uniforms, adopt the designations of the KPA, that's the acronym, and all ranking officers would use Korean names. So this is the disguising of the Chinese military into, Korean military. And you explain why they wanted them to look like. So China's getting involved, but they're trying not to look like they're involved, I guess. So they're trying not to start something bigger. So they didn't think America would get involved, just in case they're kind of covering their bases. Very, very strange military tactics, but I guess smart also, if you want to say.
They underestimated the fact that the United States was not going to let the spread of communism flood that peninsula.
So they didn't believe we'd get involved, but they were ready for us anyway. So they had these troops waiting at the border and in North Korea to keep it defended. Now, what interested me was the fact that Stalin was not 100% behind this. It's like, we'll support you in idea, but in theory, but in practice, if you get caught, we don't know you. So, on October 25th, the Chinese forces launched sudden attacks on South Korean troops. And this ended up forcing them to retreat from areas close to the Yalu and the Chongcheng River in 2 short weeks. Please forgive my pronunciation. I'm trying. This set them back, and it should have been a good warning for U.S. and UN forces, but their commander, General Douglas MacArthur, was too arrogant to heed it. Now, this is coming from Dr. Jin's scholarly article, where he's seeing all this back channel talk. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, keep in mind that Douglas MacArthur was a well-respected general. He had done so much to get us through the Pacific, and he had done so many miraculous things to get us through that part of the war. He was respected at home and respected by the men who served under him, and he was kind of a legend. So
in a way that Patton was.
Exactly.
Patton was a glorious lunatic. I like him. I don't know why. So in mid-November, MacArthur ordered his troops to start a new end the war offensive. I think MacArthur had enough of this crap, right?
Yes.
So in response, Peng Dehuai adopted a strategy to lure enemy areas deep into, I forget what it says, and they ordered the troops to wait for the best opportunity to strike back. So we're trying to lure our troops in. And in November, when we started advancing, the U.S. and UN troops started to advance, we fell into these traps that the Chinese had prepared for them. And then, so Peng ordered a vigorous counteroffensive. So late December, the Chinese and the North Korean troops regained control of nearly all the territory north of the 30th parallel. So anything that we managed to get on the north, they got it back. So like I said, Truman was trying to keep things from blowing up into a third world war. Yet MacArthur saw any giving in as unacceptable or knuckling under to the communists. He's like, he can't have that. So, Truman's trying to keep things calm, and here MacArthur's trying to provoke.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, March 1951, MacArthur sent a letter to Joseph Martin. And Martin was the House Republican leader at the time, who also shared MacArthur's support for declaring an all-out war on China. And he could be counted upon to, quote-unquote, leak this letter to the press. In this letter, MacArthur wrote, "There is no substitute for victory against international communism." So, of course, this letter gets leaked. Truman sees it, fires MacArthur on the spot for insubordination in the following month of April. Wow. As you said, decorated, well-respected hero, got us through a major war, fired.
Yeah, basically, going back to talking a little bit about MacArthur, was that he pretty much he wanted to go all the way to forgot the name of that river,
Eula,
the Eula River, and pretty much knock the communism back into China, or nuke them all the way back into China. And I guess Truman was the backstory is Truman was petrified of getting into another war, like a
I
World
would think
War.
rightly so.
And yeah, true. And then you had to think of it in terms of here was a military general that was not listening to his commander, and Truman basically told him to back off. We don't need things to go south in Korea, and of course, which ultimately led to his departure out of the military.
I just thought that was shocking. I did not know he got fired.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I'm trying to remember the quote that he said in front of Congress that good generals don't die, they just fade away, or something to that effect.
They get pushed aside,
or
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Truman's trying to keep things calm enough not to go to a third world war. So in July 51, Truman sends new military commanders over there to start peace talks. The fighting was still going on while they were negotiating this quote-unquote peace, which is really an armistice, which just means a ceasefire.
Right.
So both sides wanted to accept this ceasefire at the 38th parallel. But we could not agree on if prisoners of war should be repatriated or not, which means this means prisoners of war set back to their country of origin. China and North Korea said yes to repatriation, and we said no. And it took 2 years of negotiation over this issue before they signed armistice in July 1953. Now, let me point out, armistice is a ceasefire. It is not peace. It is not a win, or we won, they lost type of thing. It's just like, let's just stop killing each other for a bit. That's basically what that means. So POWs could stay where they wanted, go where they wanted. South Korea got 1,500 miles extra square feet near the parallel, and the new 2-mile wide demilitarized zone that is still there today.
Mm-hmm.
History.com, which I looked at, I always go look at to see what they've had some odd takes on certain topics, not everything.
Right.
So I always go see what they say based on other research. So they say the Korean War was short. But if it was from 50 to 53, that seems like a long time to me. I bet it's a long time if you live there. So compared to other wars like World War I and II, maybe it wasn't as long. Now, they said 5 million people died in this conflict. 10% were civilians. 40,000 Americans lost their lives, and 100,000 were wounded. It was 3 years of back and forth conflict. Again, the majority of lives lost and people who suffered were civilians who were going on every day about their business. So, was this a civil war backed by two superpowers? I think it was. One source I read said Koreans were fighting themselves more than the military amongst themselves. And it can be that this war can be compared to the American Civil War. I guess in that you've got brother against brother. In other ways, I don't see how it's a civil war unless it's just two factions of the same country fighting each other, which is the same as ours. But I really think it diverges in many other ways. Something I learned, I did not know, there's no resolution in this war. There was no winner. It was not declared over. It's like both sides realize they're at a stalemate and neither one were going to win, and they just agreed to stop fighting and to stay away from each other, you know. Mm-hmm. Yet both sides claimed they won. North Korea proclaimed a military triumph in the very name it gives to the war, which it calls the Victorious Fatherland Liberation War, not the Korean War. And again, this is from this scholarly article called Far Short of a Glorious Victory. So Mao was really counting on a tide of patriotism with his new communist China. He thought, you know, hey, I just had a revolution. I won. Communism won. They're trying to get it over in Korea. He thought, you know, this spirit would just carry on and they would just plow right into South Korea with communism. And he was hoping his propaganda would help win the war. Mm-hmm. There's another aspect you could go at this. We could talk about just propaganda and mind and brainwashing. But there's just so much there. So China, he was hoping that because China was powerful and he called upon the Communist Party and the whole country to echo the victory in Korea, even though it wasn't really victory, they had resisted the Americans, he thinks. So everyone, in his mind, needed to be re-educated to see things his way, and I don't think that happened. We never declared war in this conflict. We never formally declared war. Mm-hmm. Really interesting. We just picked up and went over there and started fighting. That's it. We just went over there and got down to business. Congress, U.S. Congress, has not formally declared war since World War II.
I'd like to do a little footnote of history.
Sure, go ahead.
It's kind of going back to MacArthur. Basically, MacArthur returned to the United States a genuine folk hero, a man who symbolized old military values of the world, complicated by the horrors of nuclear war. You know, cities across the nation burned President Truman in effigy. Letters to the White House ran 21-1 against MacArthur's firing. On Capitol Hill, angry representatives placed some of the telegrams they received into the congressional record. Impeach the imbecile, some of them said. We wish to protest the last outrage of the pig in the White House. And Harry Truman's old standard, if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So a little footnote there, a little bit about his Truman.
We could do a show just on MacArthur, I bet.
MacArthur, yeah. A lot of history there. And I want to say that, despite, my I guess my thing against MacArthur being fired, I don't think he should have been fired because you have such a folk hero like that. Truman was not, a terrible president. He was a halfway decent president. I can think of far worse presidents out there. Wilson.
I know you can't stand Wilson.
I can't stand Wilson. He was a racist and all sorts of things, but that's another topic altogether. But Truman was a unique. If you ever get I tell the audience, if you get a chance to see the movie Truman, which has Gary Sinise in it as Truman, it's really quite a good watch. You should definitely check it.
I didn't have time, but I wanted to watch the original Manchurian Candidate. But the remake is on Amazon Prime, and I just didn't have time to watch it.
I think the original have Robert Redford in it? Or?
Probably.
Okay.
But there's a remake they did in 2010, and time didn't allow me. I mean, it's a miracle I got this done. And in fact, I think I may have more notes than we have time for.
Well, thank you for indulging me in that footnote.
Well, no, I mean, when you talk, it enriches the...
Oh, thank you. That's so
and
nice.
And it also makes people believe that this is Space Boy Universe, and Space Boy does contribute sometimes.
And that we're not being overrun by the SJWs.
I am not here as part of a social justice warrior movement. I'm here because I don't know how to get out of this without damaging my marriage, basically. So the United Nations Security Council demanded North Korea stop fighting and withdraw from the parallel. So finally the UN says, enough. Just stop it. Get out. They ignored that. So the UNSC passed a resolution asking for member states to assist South Korea. So they got involved. The UN got involved in a war, and they said, we told them to stop. They're not stopping. If you're a member of the UN, get over there and help us stop this. That's kind of unprecedented.
Yeah.
So while the U.S. provided the bulk of the manpower and equipment, 15 other countries fought with us. United Kingdom, France, Australia, Canada, Turkey, and Ethiopia, just to name a few. Found that interesting. And I know we're getting close here. North Korea captured Seoul in 3 days. They launched that amphibious attack, which met with success, only to be set back when China ended the war. China sent tired American troops into the longest retreat in U.S. military history, also known as the bug out. One soldier described that. It was not an army, but a leaderless horde that was after them. Just quickly, the Korean War also was the beginning of desegregation of the military by executive order, meaning ours. This order mandated equality of treatment and opportunity, but it was a gradual thing. They still kept separate units over in Korea. Casualties mounted. And as the wounded kept coming in, field commanders accepted black male replacements into the fighting. General Matthew B. Ridgway took over after MacArthur. He reintegrated the entire Far East Command by September of 1954, and the rest of the armed forces followed, and Ridgway called segregation un-American and un-Christian. So everybody had an equal opportunity to go over there and lose their life. Let me just finish this and we can go to break. They signed that armistice, which is just a ceasefire, in 1953. There was no peace treaty between North and South Korea. There still isn't. They still have the 2.5 mile wide demilitarized zone. Tensions remain high, mostly over nuclear weapons in the north. There has been some assassination attempts, border incursions, and an artillery attack in 2010 that left 4 dead. And then when we come back, I want to talk about the POWs. Okay,
and just before we go to break, more current history of Korea right now is that President Trump is going to be on his way over there on the 27th to Vietnam. And
I was going to have you do that, talk about that.
So let's go ahead and take the break, and we'll come right back.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sir Lotta.
The epic battle begins this Friday. Direct from ringside at Laser Death Melt and Bot vs. Bot in Galaxy's 2-ton weight championship, where your challenger, Good Bot, will face the reigning champion, Bad Bot.
You're terminated.
Reserve seating starting at $30. 2-drink minimum, where ladies don't get in free. This is an SBU production.
You're listening to Space Boy Universe.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Sir Lana.
All right, we're back. And I just want to say thanks for all the Space Cadets for, turning on their view screens and tapping into the network and listening to us tonight from the universe. And I'm just talking now to see if Sir Lana's listening.
Well, Dino said something about you being a beaten down husband, and I was like, "Oh, you better reply in there." And he was like, "Oh, it's all good or whatever." And I said, "No, you've been a good boy."
The thing is that Sir Lana could say whatever crap she wants. I'm very confident in who I am.
I haven't said any crap.
No, you know what I'm saying. I might be over exaggerating it.
He said you deserve a reward. He said he's already got his reward. He's had through 2 bags of circus peanuts, so that's nothing to do with me.
No, I still got a bag here. I didn't want to be rude.
I have 2 bags of circus peanuts. I don't know what you've done with them.
I've had 1 bag so far, but I didn't want to be rude and continue smacking into the mic.
Well, I came over there and I stole some of your tiny Snickers.
Tiny Snickers?
Yeah, that you got for Valentine's Day.
Dun-dun-dun.
So, anywho, I need to plow ahead. This is really important. I want to talk about the prisoners of war, the POWs, because they are the reason this took 2 years longer than possibly necessary, this whole conflict.
Mm-hmm.
I read this other article, scholarly journal, titled A War Without End, and I think that sums up the Korean War, because it's technically not over. There was no peace declared. There was no winner declared. There was no loser declared. They just agreed to go home. That's it.
Yeah, without a peace agreement, leaving South Korea technically at war for over 50 years.
Still technically at war.
Mm-hmm. For 50 years.
So the author of this publication I read said they learned about this war through the stories of the POWs. POWs captured by North Korea and China were subjected to brainwashing, which turned the victims into human robots, and that's what the film The Manchurian Candidate was about. Both sides, North and South, used methods like this to try to influence or win over the hearts and minds of the prisoners of war. And Hollywood does not portray Korean POWs accurately, but of course, when have they ever portrayed anything accurately? In fact, there has been no other war where POWs played such a central role. It was the main reason they couldn't resolve anything for 2 years. The truce was delayed because of how to handle the POWs, and they were arguing about it for 2 years. Now, South Korea was not well prepared to handle large numbers of captives. Their POW camps were overflowing. And yeah, we're talking about our side, the American-backed side, the South Koreans. They had to make a new camp on an island near Busan. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Koje-do, which basically it's a tent city with 150,000 prisoners. It was overcrowded, it was chaotic, and it was violent. One of the main issues there was with prisoners fighting each other. You had soldiers who towed the Communist Party line, fighting for what they believe in, who are interred in this POW tent city, along with conscripted civilians who did not believe in the North Korean cause and did not support communist ideologies, yet there they were as POWs. Mm-hmm. Then you have South Koreans who defected to the North and got captured, or civilians mistaken for guerrilla fighters who had nothing to do with any of this, and they're in this camp. Sorting out who was who was one of the biggest challenges, and the violence between all these groups was the other. Now, things got really messy when the Chinese POWs started coming in. Some of those were prisoners. They were reluctant communists, and they were enrolled, and they said enrolled, and I don't know if they're being facetious there or if that's code for draft or coercion. So they were enrolled in the ranks of the Chinese People's Volunteers. Some POWs saw their capture in the South as their chance to escape to Taiwan, which a lot of them, where they wanted to go was Taiwan. So the war was being fought inside and outside of all of these POW camps. So, what to do when returning POWs? This was a major hurdle. It delayed the armistice. So where was home for an anti-communist Korean if you're from the North, and vice versa? What do you do with Chinese mainland prisoners? Should they be released into South Korea? Well, China and North Korea said send them all to China, but we said all POWs should be given a choice, and they should go through screening. The screening process is interviewing them like, where do you want to go? You're free to go, but where do you want to go? But the United States and South Korea were also, of course, very eager to see as many conversions to our way of thinking as possible, just like the communists wanted. Mm-hmm. They wanted to promote the cause of the free world amongst the POWs in their camps. So just like they did over there, we had these education programs, radio broadcasts that instructed prisoners in the achievements of American democracy and the evils of communist dictatorships, while Christian pastors were brought in to provide religious teachings to the POWs. Violent clashes between communist and non-communist prisoners broke out on our side, and camp guards sometimes joined the fray on the anti-communist side rather than control the violence. So there was bad stuff on both sides of this conflict. As mentioned before, it's a war of ideologies, both internal and external to Korea. This is the main conflict, of course. Now, in May of 1952, pro-communist POWs at the Tent Island camp staged a riot in which they succeeded in capturing the camp's commandant, U.S. Brigadier Francis Dodd. They held Dodd hostage for 3 days, and they said they would release him after their negotiations. So what they wanted Dodd to do was admit to all the abuse that was going on in the camp and promise to stop it and change the screening process. Now, the screening process is where they asked the POWs, where do you want to go? Mm-hmm. There was another riot in another camp, but it was stopped by South Korean and U.S. military, but it ended up leaving 31 POWs dead. Half of those killed were at the hands of other prisoners. 131 were wounded. So you got these violent riots that continued in these POW camps in South Korea. So June 18, 1953, something really odd happened. The South Korean military police suddenly removed 27,000 POWs. Most of these were, quote-unquote, enrolled in the South Korean military. So this was a mass breakout, basically. And it was planned by Syngman Rhee. He was fed up or opposed to whatever armistice negotiations were going on between the UN, China, and North Korea. Rhee had hoped that this great escape would derail the stagnation of the negotiations. But the negotiations continued a whole another month, into July. So in the meantime, North Korea had 87,000 soldiers from the UN that were prisoners. 3,000 of them died in captivity. So it seems both sides were really unprepared for the sheer volume of prisoners they took in. Mm-hmm. North Korea was even less prepared than the South, and because of that, the POWs were moved around a lot in North Korea, meaning they took the guys and marched them from one camp to another with inadequate shelter, lack of food, and in freezing conditions. And those who couldn't hack it were just shot. You're like, well, you're causing a problem. We don't need you. Shoot them. The permanent camps in the north were overcrowded, unsanitary, and they also suffered from starvation. So both sides, you've got the communists, and I guess we'll just call ourselves the capitalists, trying to get POWs to change their minds about their stance and where to go. Because we're still trying to stop the spread of communism, and now we're trying to do it by re-education, persuasion, propaganda. In the North, POWs were educated on Marxism, the evils of American imperialism. African Americans were segregated from other prisoners of war and given education sessions which focused on U.S. racism. So again, they're segregating African Americans in the North to tell them how bad race, like they didn't already know, So they actually did persuade a small number of U.S. and UN servicemen to write articles or make radio broadcasts praising the Chinese and the North Koreans. Some captured U.S. pilots were induced to confess, quote unquote, that they had been involved in American germ warfare attacks on North Korea and China. Germ warfare was fabricated by the Chinese and North Koreans. So some of the propaganda was successful, and they actually converted some to communism, although that number was very small and the impact was still kind of considerable. Ultimately, prisoners of war were repatriated into two operations, Little Switch and Big Switch. 13,444 South Korean and UN command POWs were repatriated by the North. 82,493 North Korean and Chinese prisoners were sent home by the South. Yet, 48,839 Chinese and Korean prisoners of the UN were not repatriated. Instead, they chose to go to Taiwan because they wanted to. Though some have been forced to renounce their homeland, there were 21 American and 1 British POW that refused repatriation and settled in China, but later they did return home to where they came from. A large number of South Korean POWs were never returned by the North. I'm not shocked by that at all. The estimate of that exceeds probably 50,000. Some chose to defect to the North, but most were just kept against their will. And this is one of the many great tragedies that haunt relations between North and South Korea to this day. So they had over possibly 50,000 POWs in North Korea that were not returned, and that they're bitter about it. So North Korea, there's a series of economic problems that plagued the country for a long time. The population there today still struggles with starvation. The weather seems to be bad most of the time, making it impossible to grow crops. There was a severe famine in 2009. North Korea rejected help from other countries. Meanwhile, South Korea has taken the technology route, and they're booming because of the IT. They're one of the countries that were not affected due to the recession. They're growing. They have a fabulous annual GDP rate, gross product. During the war, many families were separated in North and South Korea. At that time, South Korea was a poor country, and later in time, things changed on both sides of the divide, and there were hundreds of orphan children because of that divide. Now, some other quick facts for you. Some 10,000 Native Americans are thought to have gone over and fought in the Korean conflict between 51 and 53 and died there. They fought alongside Koreans, Chinese, Americans, many of ethnic backgrounds, British, French, Dutch, Canadians, Australians, including Australia's first Aboriginal Army officer, New Zealanders, South Africans, Japanese, Turks, Greeks, Filipinos, Thais, Colombians, Ethiopians, and many other nationalities. So it wasn't just Americans. Outcomes, they still have the demilitarized zone. South Korea is an economic power. North Korea still suffers in poverty 5 decades later. North Korea has some really dangerous toys. There's been some clashes in the 21st century in 1999, 2002, and 2009. We have a better standing now with Russia and Japan, and any war between North and South Korea will kick off a war between the U.S. and China. Now, if you want to say anything about the current state of Korea, I just want to say, although armistice stated no new reinforcing weapons were to be brought into the Korean peninsula, the North Korean military rebuilt their forces by importing aircraft from the USSR, and in 1958, the U.S. secretly began deploying nuclear weapons to South Korea, a strategy which they has continued through the 1990s. Now that 2Y DMZ still exists, it's heavily fortified with razor wire and landmines, but it's mostly inaccessible to human beings. So as a product of that, there's a rich wildlife preserve there that shelters some endangered species. So, I guess there's some good news. But it's left mutual fear and distrust firmly in place. The Cold War never ended for Korea. It was never resolved. The war is still going on quietly. North Korean leader Kim Il-sung failed to unite Korea under a communist regime. He looked to blame others for his failure. So Looking at his political rivals, he looked to strengthen his autocratic power, and in doing so, he ended up paving the way by creating a dynasty succession, which is in place today. His grandson, Kim Jong-un, runs North Korea. South Korea was even more anti-communist when this is all said and done, which only firmed up Syngman Rhee's dictatorship. The democratization of South Korea happened in the 1990s. So just want to kind of sum this up here. I learned there's no absolutes in this conflict except the loss of life. There was no absolute declaration of war. There was no absolute winner. There was no absolute peace treaty. There was no absolute loser. There's been 60 years after armistice that the 30th parallels remain there, and that as the line that divides Korea, presenting itself as the most visible, long-lasting, and unchanged legacy of war. I learned that China at this time was delusional. Mao Zedong said, China's great war to resist America and assist Korea achieved a glorious victory. And as that document I rated, it was far from a glorious victory. Like I said, highly recommend reading that. Just email me if you want this. Also, when I researched this, I found out there's a lot of angles to go at this, and that fascinates me. It turns out there were some medical achievements made during this conflict. In the case of airlifting patients via helicopter, this is the one where they found out how to really do it right. There were so many casualties, but the highest ones that had the survivability, your chances were surviving were really good if you could be evacuated by airlift. And it reduced the death rate by 50%. And this is what you saw a lot of in the TV show MASH. Speaking of, yes, we're going to talk about MASH. The television show MASH won 14 Emmy Awards and had an audience of 100 million viewers and lasted longer than the actual Korean War. Unlike World War II and Vietnam, the Korean War did not get much media attention while it was happening in the U.S. It didn't get much attention here. But the most famous representation of the war in popular culture is the television series MASH, which was set in a field hospital in South Korea. The TV show ran from 1972 to 1983. See, I was born in 72.
And Solana, don't forget that it was based upon a movie.
I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. And its final episode was the most watched television finale in TV history. But it's got an interesting background. The character of Hawkeye Pierce in the TV show was based on a real person, H. Richard Hornberger, a former U.S. military surgeon who wrote the book the TV series was based upon. They made it into a movie first and then a TV show, but Hornberger hated the TV show. Oh, he hated it. First, he barely profited from the TV show, getting only $500 per episode. Then he ended up selling the rights for very little money. Well, to me, it sounds like he had poor representation. He should have had a better agent or something. So, but he
$500 an episode, multiplied times 24 episodes a season, and it ran for 12 seasons.
Well, he sold it before it went.
Oh, it went.
You know, he didn't keep it all. He distanced himself from the TV show because as it became popular in the commentary it made about the Korean War, he didn't agree with it. The book he wrote, yeah, it had some humor, but it was real war experiences and it was very serious. Hornberger was drafted in 1951 and sent to Mobile Army Surgical Hospital 8055. So that's what MASH stands for, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. It's a tent-based camp located on the 38th parallel where he was. Life in MASH units were tough. There was constant stress of war, long hours in surgery, and these units moved at least once a month because you're like on the show that was tense, you just picked up and took off, you know. And as I mentioned, the Korean War did see some medical breakthroughs, and Hornberger was part of it. While he was over there, he pioneered a type of surgery that was prohibited during the day. Man, I have got so many typos in this document. You'll never see it. on History.com, they said at the time it was against U.S. Army regulations for surgeons to do anything but close off a blood vessel in case of an injury to the vascular system or blood vessels. Not sure why, but the realities of war wounds made this intolerable to Hornberger and other surgeons who found themselves banned from repairing damaged arteries. So, in 1951, Hornberger's colleagues told this guy Friedman, they're telling the story to, surgeons at the MASH unit decided that their Hippocratic oath to do no harm was more important than Army regulations, and they started repairing arteries despite the rules. Hornberger was the first to break this rule, and he put it in the book, too. Word spread that he was doing this to other MASH units, and the doctors also started doing arterial repairs. After the war ended in 1953, doctors who kept up that practice helped further medical knowledge about repairing arteries. So some good came out of it. It took Hornberger 12 years to write MASH, a novel about 3 Army doctors. That's the title. Another 5 years of rejections by book publishers before he was published under his pseudonym Richard Hooker in 1968. Perfect timing for this kind of novel, because here we were looking for a lighter take on war, because here we are at this time. We're in smack dab in the middle of the Vietnam War. I'm losing my voice.
Well, about 1970 is you're getting ready for the Vietnam War to...
Well, I read that went from 53 to 72, something like that. So the book was adapted into a hit movie.
Mm-hmm.
The movie captured Hornberger's heart and sarcasm in the character of Hawkeye Pierce. The TV show was about the Korean War, but it captured some of the feelings about the Vietnam War. The movie and the television show helped the public, us, deal with the toll the Vietnam War was taking. We got to see some of these primitive and harsh conditions on both sides of the conflict. The MASH show became an allegory for the Vietnam War. But Hornberger hated the show. He hated the anti-war sentiments attributed to Hawkeye by the public. He did say the show was accurate with the physicality of the MASH unit, like accurate uniforms, vehicles, and aircraft are actually used in that time period, but he said the show tramples on my memories. Hornberger was not writing an anti-war book. His son, William, said, "My father was a political conservative, and he did not like the liberal tendencies that Alan Alda portrayed as Hawkeye Pierce. Nevertheless, the book and the television show define what Americans know about the Korean and somewhat the Vietnam Wars." And that's the end of my notes. So we can do call-ins when we come back.
Well, we can do call-ins when we come back, and I can actually give you a current status.
Current status of North-South Korea.
Okay, let's see here where we're at. Break 4. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning into the universe. We still got a few more minutes to go, so here we go for the break.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sir Lotta.
Greetings, Space Cadets. Let's see what's in the sky tonight in the Spaceboy Universe. Tonight, in the eastern sky, we have Spaceboy Universe rising above the horizon in glorious splendor. And in the west, we can see Solaris Majoris, which is visible at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, just below the K28 belt. So keep your eyes on the sky and listen to Spaceboy Universe.
I'm Solaris Lurvin, and I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Sir Lana.
We're back, and I have no idea what Spaceboy's doing over there, but I have a few things I want to say before I let him take over, and then we can maybe take calls here in just a moment. I have some documents that I used to research that I downloaded from the university library.
Sorry.
And one of these is called Speaking from Ground Zero, the Bombing of North Korea in 1950. And this is taken from intercepted personal letters to family members and various... let me just open it so I can tell you where it came from. But just want to make it available to you if you just email contact@spaceboyuniverse.com. I'll be happy to share any of these because it's really good information. This was taken from official records, personal correspondence, newspaper reports, propaganda, North Korean documents, literary journals, and reconstructions of scenes of people who were there at the time. And this document is really shocking and stark of what it's like to live in North Korea. And why are you doing this to me? Sorry, Acrobat Pro is going crazy. And I've highlighted some things in there I knew due to time restrictions we were going to get to, but the U.S. bombing campaign tore apart the fabric of North Korean society. And it talks about what happened on that side and the devastation and what it did to the people of North Korea and how they started to feel about America. So if they were indifferent or they didn't like the current regime, this absolutely turned them against us 100%. So I think it's worth reading if you're interested. So just, any of these documentations that I have you're interested in, just, send me an email. And if you're ready, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about where are we now in North and South Korea? What's going on with that?
Really? You're turning it over to me?
Yes. I would love to turn this entire show over to you every single night. And I could just go listen from another room.
Okay, so basically, I'm just get my bearings here. I'm just so shocked.
Could you not have done this show like I did? You could have done all that, right? And I could just sit here and go, uh-huh.
Do you really want me to go down that road with you?
Let's go so we can get on.
Basically, the thing is that the current state of North Korea, they've been quite quiet lately. And say what you want about President Trump. He has managed to quiet Kim. I don't have his full name in front of me. That's terrible.
Kim Jong-un?
Yes. There hasn't been a missile launch in over 15 months. And now President Trump has announced a second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Will take place in Hanoi, Vietnam on February 27th and 28th.
Vietnam.
Yeah, well, it's just down the road, easy to get there. There might be a Buc-ee's here and there along the way, and that they could stop at. But I get the impression that Kim Jong-un, he loves pop culture, and I mentioned this to you during the break that he's a good friend of Dennis Rodman, the basketball player. He likes basketball.
Weird, man.
And and don't get me wrong, I think it's great that we're seeing some progress here, but the North Koreans have been notorious about doing this. The comparison has been to the hero's journey kind of situation, where they start something, they escalate something to where it almost seems like it's going to get out of hand, and then to bring people in and say, hey, please don't do this. What can we do to get you to calm down? And then they get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Kim Jong-un probably looks at Trump as this personality, this larger than life, kind of like what is it, the MC at a circus. And so
I wonder if they compare hair products.
No telling, but so what we have here is, peace on the surface. In fact, fairly recently, Kim Jong-un basically met the president down in South Carolina, in South Korea, and they even hugged it out, which was really odd for,
pretty strange.
And from our perspective, it's odd, but their people are like one big family that's been separated for all these years, and if we had just let them unify, I think at one point they tried to unify both North and South, and it didn't go through.
Well, you got one that are communists and the other ones that are not, and they don't want to be that, and the others don't want to be like. How can you unify them when you have two ideologies that don't get along and won't compromise? Right? Am I wrong?
Sorry, I'm just thinking of the United States right now.
Am I wrong? I mean, if I've got it wrong, correct me.
Well, I'm afraid to say you've got it wrong because you might hurt me.
Like that's ever stopped you before?
Anyway.
Looking at a map, by the way.
Oh, that's good.
Vietnam is pretty far from North Korea, South Korea.
Not that far.
Well, it's almost like the landscape almost repeats itself. You've got this dangly bit, and then it's on a dangly bit too. Interesting. I never realized how small Japan is as a piece of land, and it's basically one long archipelago. Yeah.
But for many years after I guess the war with North Korea, the North Koreans were taught that the United States were the devils and that they only bring death and destruction, and so
they're not entirely wrong about that, but we think we're doing it for the right reasons. Not saying we are, but I don't know. It's paranoia. We're worried about them overtaking us, and they're worried about us overtaking them. When it's just like, if you could just stay over there and keep your crazy ideas over there, and we'll keep our crazy ideas over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot like
religion. I could see how Japan would have overseen them, considering how close they are. Mm-hmm. Because Hiroshima is just across from South Korea.
I'm zooming in.
I mean, when you look at the islands of Japan.
I'm zooming in. And we bombed that. Mm. And they might have been able to see that from South Korea. Yeah, and I also see how they got their rear end taken by that tsunami. It just kind of vulnerable hanging out there in the middle of the sea, huh?
And just what's interesting is as you look at the Sea of Japan, Russia kind of is in that area. The tip of Russia is in there, and you can see how China has the back end of North Korea.
Yeah, Korsakov.
Yeah, I see that one too. Anyway, so on the surface, it looks like peace is moving forward with North Korea. And, that's promising. Peace is always good compared to war.
Yeah. This is always amazing. It's always amazing to me how close that little piece of Russia touches this little piece of Alaska almost. I mean, how close. They're so close. If you fly too close to one side or the other, they get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, what we were watching, I guess, was it Flying Alaska?
Flying Wild Alaska. Oh, yeah. Such a good show. Oh, such a good show. I'm going to put the phone number in the doohickey here. It's a toll-free number if you want to call and talk it out.
It would have been quite interesting if Russia had not sold us Alaska, mm-hmm. what the geopolitics would be.
They have a foothold on our land, Mm-hmm. That's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned a lot. A lot of it kind of really blew my mind. I think I should look into Vietnam as well later on. when we come back around, to a history topic.
Mm-hmm.
I still kind of want to do a conspiracy show just to stick it to YouTube.
Like QAnon?
QAnon?
QAnon.
That's something we can explore. I mean, if you've got some other ideas.
That's a modern conspiracy theory thing that's going on.
I also want to make a case for...
You see, and that's kind of why I enjoyed the Korean War topic, because it's relevant to current history right now, with Trump going over there and dealing with Kim Jong-un.
I typed that in, by the way, the current state of North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And came up with a bunch of stuff. If you put in North Korea now.
And the Chinese government, President Xi something Ping, recently had a 2-day summit meeting with the North Koreans.
Cheap flights to North Korea. Why would you do that? You can't do that, can you?
Mm-hmm. You can go stay in North Korea if you want to.
They'll let you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that safe for an American?
As long as you don't tear down any propaganda posters, then they're not going to, incarcerate you and beat you up. I can't think of that poor kid that they sent him back home dead because he, first off, I can't stress this enough to Americans. When you go to someone else's country, you got to be polite and respect the politics of that land.
Logan Paul.
And that's a good one. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You have stupid, dumb Americans like that disrespect, the place that they go to. So this poor young man decided to pull down some propaganda poster, and he was going to take it back. Oh, we have a caller.
An anonymous caller.
See how it always, when I get into a topic or I start to talk,
somebody cuts you off.
Yes.
All right, caller, are you there?
Hello, this is Dino from California.
Hello, Dino.
I wanted to compliment first. Hello, Space Boy. I wanted to compliment Sirlana for the excellent research, being that she wasn't even alive when this conflict was going, and it's nice to revisit the history I do know. So that's number one. And number two, personally, it's your show, but I'm not into politics on these types of shows. I like to look beyond the veil, so to speak.
Right.
But some good points were brought up about the author of the book that MASH was based upon, which I did not know. So I learned something new.
Yay!
And that being... Oh, I always do. I mean, how do you think I got any kind of smarts that I do have is from listening and learning. It's a lifelong endeavor. So, at any rate, being said that it's not a political show, it is just very interesting how even more nowadays in the current times, people from different cultures and different countries can meet without a government around them or without a crisis and get along just fine. Even if you think that guy looks funny or they think, boy, they got weird customs here. It's when you get the governments involved, which are supposed to be who keep the order. And nowadays, many countries in the world the governments are creating the disorder, the disinformation, and the hate of each other. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that love Asian food, right? For example, certain types of food. They have a Korean pot restaurant that I've seen, which hot pot restaurant. What's that? Well, that's Korean food. They put
Space Boy loves Korean barbecue.
Oh yeah,
and then barbecue.
There's a place that's not too far from the house where it's like you cook it yourself. They bring you the stuff and you get to cook it yourself, and it's quite an experience. I think it just adds to the experience. So.
Well, I mean, that's it. That's just like fondue. You could be a Danish person and do fondue, and you see how alike we really are. And I mean, that's not much of a stretch. A Texan who likes barbecue, come on, that's not a good example.
No, I like kimchi, and there's other Korean dishes that I eat, and I'm sure K28 would be proud of me.
Well, that's it. I can't stand kimchi, but I hear it's very good. I can take kale if it's cooked correctly.
I have no idea what that is.
But that being said, it's any culture, not just Korean. You go around our planet, and even though some people may initially look a little different, they might wear what you think is a funny hat or a article of clothing, and yet, I mean, I see people all the time, stop these immigrants coming in, and yet they love, Mexican-style art or clothing. They wear a shirt, I see someone who says, those Asians, they're strange, and yet I've known many Caucasian people who marry Asian women. So that's my point. We're one planet here, and sometimes the government gets in the way of peace. The government tells us they kill people in the name of, we're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I found out doing this research on this other document. I didn't have time to go into it. Tells it from the North Korean side. When we started bombing them, it was kind of indiscriminate because people were just going about their daily lives, doing their, farming or going to work, and here come the bombs, and it just, people were losing lives left and right, and it's just, so, I mean, we're not the good guy or the bad guy, and they're, that's just how they fought the war.
Well, that's the bottom line about war in general. Wars in general on Earth seem to be fought mostly for resources or control. And, even during World War II, the Americans bombed Dresden in Germany into the ground, and they didn't care if kids and yet they scream and yell when we get bombed. I think terrorists are using a tactic that they feel they have no other way, no matter what country they're from, but we all say, how horrible, the children and women and all that, and yet, both sides do that eventually, even if they don't plan to, and that's the bottom line that many baby boomers and others came about in the 60s in the Western world, which was that war is not a good thing for plants, people, animals. It just doesn't, in the long run, get the desired results. Yeah, somebody has power over someone for a while, but then 50 years later, like what we did, Howard Stern has a funny take on this kind of stuff. He makes jokes about it. He goes, well, we had to drop the atomic bomb on Japan. He said, but boy, he says, after that, he goes, boy, they behave very nicely now for many years, And indeed, they've become a very strong economy and have brought us innovations. But why did we have to get into a war in the first place? I think people within their own countries, because we are still in a time of nation states, even though some people are trying to push a new world order, people in these nation states, you have to rise up from within if you see something bad. And if you see something bad or a bad leader, instead of getting the whole world involved, that's where the time comes. And that drives me to a subject that Space Boy and I and others have talked about. I'm a very liberal guy on many things, and I think you become liberal when you learn more. And a lot of people hate liberals, and that's something our own government is doing now. They take one issue or another issue, and they try to make it like, well, all liberals are bad or all conservatives are bad. And as I've talked with Space Boy about, I'm a liberal who supports gun rights, and yet I go on places where I make good arguments, and I see other people, maybe they're conservative, make good arguments, but then they have to attack liberals because that's what they're being conditioned to do. Whether a liberal wrote a law or not, I constantly tell people I'm liberal on a lot of things, but that is a constitutional right. For example, this is just one example of how governments control climates. And we say we want democracies, but all we have nowadays in most countries is oligarchies. Yeah, that's my anger, and that's what leads to wars, because the oligarchy said, oh, we want this, and this is good for us. So they go about and do the propaganda in every country of the world, and they go out and they make a stink and say, this is good for you, whatever middle class is left. Or for the poor people, they go, shut up, we're running things, you're poor. And that's the injustice in the world, the real injustice that places like the Korean conflict point out. That's my 2 cents on that.
And I like having my conversations with you, because you definitely come from there are moments where our thought processes are kind of different and diverge, but there are many conversations we have, whether it be music or things like that we connect on a fundamental level, and that's one reason why I appreciate the dialogue that we have together.
Well, and it's a dialogue that doesn't say, you're stupid, you're an idiot, shut up, or I'll hang up on you,
right.
Which is what too many people do nowadays. They don't like your point of view, so they dismiss it.
I'm trying to imagine somebody saying, shut up, I'll hang up on you, I'll just hang up on them.
I think Solana and I have mentioned this before, especially when we were talking to Solaris Blue Raven the other night. People getting butthurt over, some things that, it used to be a time that we could say something and people didn't cry about it. It was like, we didn't like it, but we just, okay,
it didn't fundamentally change my life anyway, because you said something.
Bless your heart, I'm sorry you feel that way, but, it just, I keep thinking of when I was a kid and how, as an adult now, I've seen so many of my friends go off the deep end because of the way things are with, like social media, and can't have a civil conversation without someone getting hurt about the whole thing. And
name calling, insults. No, I mean, exactly. We're on the same line there. And what are they, after all? What are things, whether it was about Korea or World War II, it was opinions. Mm-hmm. People had different opinions. Unfortunately, some very sick, selfish people get into power, and that's beyond an opinion. That's damaging to others. It's like, was it Kant, the philosopher, K-A-N-T? Sir Lana can help me on this. Wasn't he the one that said... I think he was the one. You correct me, but he said something about freedom, and he said that my freedom and your freedom are determined by, you can have any kind of thought-free process you want, but it extends as far as, like, if you make a fist and you can swing around on a pivot. As long as you don't hit anybody else, that's your opinion, you have a right to it. But once it starts affecting others, this is where we get into conflict. And we get into conflicts because opinions are made up by what? Personal experience. You might have had something happen to you 25, 30, 40 years ago, and you haven't changed, whereas maybe your opinion would change with new facts, new information, maybe an emotional experience you've had since that time. I mean, life has changed, and change is not always fun or not always comfortable. But that's why I'm a liberal, because there's some things, you're going to be, maybe you're talking about money, the way you deal with money. Well, that could be a proven thing. Money and assets, there's maybe a proper way to manage them in a way that's foolish. Mm-hmm. But when you come to ideas or conflicts between different people's opinions, that means that you're going to have to take my life or I'm going to have to take yours because we disagree. I mean, I see people openly now, we're talking about Korea tonight, but I see people openly now on various media saying, there's going to have to be a civil war in America. That's a scary thing. Yeah. Why? Because we have a different opinion? I thought that's what America was founded on. You can have a different opinion, and that's what bugs me about people, and they're not all just liberals, but people I knew from high school, because we're coming up on a reunion, and I'd like to keep quiet. I've never been a big gun advocate. I just determined that I had a right. And I have people now saying, all these people are being murdered and children in schools, and then they start calling me names because I say, well, taking away a gun from a legal, law-abiding person, how is that going to stop shooting up children? And they go, oh, you're an idiot, or you have a small penis. I've been insulted all kinds of ways, and I'm just trying to keep it civil, but there are many people that I'm right and you're wrong, and they will listen to nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what starts wars. That's what starts wars. That and oligarchies that are in power that are, the 1% of the 1% who want to control and keep their family in that condition. Meanwhile, the rest of the world suffers. And then we get into how rich do you need to be where you can't spend it all, or that you're spending it only on personal, selfish things, when so many, probably the majority of the world, is suffering or could use more food or could use a little more security or is not living from paycheck to paycheck. So whenever I hear about international conflicts and patriotism, yeah, I'm patriotic, but not to the point where if America is so great, why do we have to control the rest of the world? Well, because they'll want to take it from us. Well, how about this? We're strong on our homeland, but then we maybe assist other people instead of trying to manipulate them, so that maybe they'll come around to, even in their culture or their lifestyle or their life experiences, to, hey, maybe democracy is a better way. Maybe if they don't, then their grandchildren. I mean, we all know this. I've seen it around. People are having grandkids now that have totally different values than they had. So that's what war is about. It's about resources and opinions and my way or the highway. And unfortunately, even if you're a mountain lion or you're a buffalo, if you're a predator or a prey, you have to kind of go along with certain things and be flexible, like the grass in the wind, So that's the real issue about how these wars start and all the ideologies that are built up around them. That's my 2 cents.
And I respect your 2 cents because you allow me to express my 2 cents, and when we get together, that's 4 cents. So,
And that and a nickel will get you a cup of coffee. I don't know.
Pretty much.
If you bake. Well, okay, that's what I have to say tonight. It's coming up on 9:30, and I hope somebody else calls in, of one of our vast audience of listeners. Okay, then.
All right, Dino.
Well, good night.
We
Thank
love
you
you.
for the show.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Dino.
All right, so the caller will have to wait. Let's take our break, and when we come back, we'll have Mr.
Pick him up during the break?
Yeah, we'll pick him up during the break. So here goes our last break of the evening.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sir Lotta.
Get your game on Spaceboy Universe. Level up with Spaceboy Universe. No quarters, no problems. Play it at Spaceboy Universe.
listening to Spaceboy Universe. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Sir Lana.
All right, we're back. We've been chit-chatting with our next caller. Who is this?
I don't know.
It is Bev.
It's your marriage counselor.
And there
thank
is
you.
Bob.
Now I can't. He gets right in my ear and does that. It's like, oh, now I can't hear.
So how are you tonight, Bev?
Oh, doing real good.
So did you learn anything tonight?
Yes. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. And when you were saying, Bob's like, I did. Well, your dad was in it too, so. But now you derailed me. See what I put up with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and I didn't shoot.
What you didn't know?
I can't remember what I can't remember what I was going to say now.
Take your time.
It's what happens when you get old.
You bet.
When you were saying about
you know, K28's old.
Shit. Let her talk.
Yeah, I'll be 61 this year, so I'm not that far behind him.
Don't interrupt her.
Hey,
but,
hold on just a second, Bev. Chill out over there.
She's trying to remember. Let her work through her process.
Hey, relax.
I'm on her side.
Tell her to take a break. Tell her marriage counselor told her to take a break.
You heard her, right?
So I can get up and leave?
No, you can't leave.
No, just take a break from what you're doing.
I'm looking at gifts.
You know, do you need one of these?
Oh, God.
Because you're
no, because you're going to have to throw it at me, and that's not going to end well.
Here, let's try.
No, that's not going to end well.
You can't wait. You can't catch? See,
no, I don't want to do that.
Okay, this is the perfect conversation. You know, have you seen those Snickers commercials where they say, "Here, have this," and yeah, because you're acting like Robin Williams in the show Birdcage.
That means I'm going to win an Oscar soon, so that's very complimentary. So anyway, Bev, you said you learned some things. I'm interested in your take on all this.
Yes. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I didn't know about. When you were, I knew it was a police action at first,
mm-hmm.
and I think the reason that they categorized it the government, is so when they were done and got out, they wouldn't have to pay them benefits.
Could be, but then they had never officially declared war on either side. So, but the Chinese called it a glorious, a war, even though they were completely delusional. And that's what took me by surprise, is like they were so firmly entrenched in their strange beliefs that reality had no meaning, apparently.
And what's sad is I remember when we were kids, we were taught to be polite and say, well, you look nice,
mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. If you say that nowadays, you're asking to be sued for sexual harassment.
That's why I don't look at anybody in the eye anymore. It's safer not to.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that way, they can't come back on you and say, hey, you did this or you did that. I mean, people are... We're living in a land of snowflakes.
That's what Trump says. Didn't he?
I mean, come on, get a grip. It's reality.
Well, I learned everything because I knew nothing. And I enjoyed learning...
There was things,
about...
And there was things in... Oh, I'm sorry.
I enjoyed learning about MASH how the guy who wrote the book.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was a new revelation to me. I knew there was a movie that they loosely based off of, but it was actually a book first, then a movie, then the TV series.
Yeah. And see, I didn't know it was a book first. I knew it was a movie. We watched, I remember watching the movie, and then, but I didn't know it was a book. Mm-hmm. There was a book, and I didn't know the guy that wrote it didn't even like it.
Well, he didn't like the TV series because Hawkeye Pierce was portrayed as being really anti-government, anti-military, and that's not what Hornberger was. He was a conservative, and even though he was drafted and he didn't like some of the military policies, he still wasn't anti-war, anti-government, or anti-anything. He went over there and did what he had to do, but he didn't like how the TV show had these leanings, these liberal leanings to it, and he didn't. That's why he distanced himself from it. I guess maybe he didn't want to really profit off of that anyway. So.
And I didn't even know that MacArthur got fired.
Yeah, isn't that shocking?
I thought he was. And see, I thought he was in Vietnam too.
Nope.
But
he got fired by.
Well, we'll find out soon enough, Bev. Next time we do a history topic, I'll tackle Vietnam.
Yeah, but I don't think he was though. But I mean, and the man was multi-timed decorated.
Mm-hmm. He was a folk
He gave
hero.
his life. Yeah, and he gave up his whole life. The Army was his life, you may as well say.
Mm-hmm.
The Army was his family. And then they ended, I don't think there's anybody that has served like he did. Mm-hmm. And he was a folk hero.
The only other general that came close to that kind of greatness was Patton.
Patton fascinates me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was in what, 2?
Yeah, World War II.
World War II. The movie, Patton, I think that's one of one of my top 10 favorite movies.
Really?
And George C. Scott.
He was like crap crazy, but I didn't even care.
Oh, yeah. But he was, when he said something, everybody listened.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was good too. And it's just so sad that, the government did that. Now, who was he fired by?
Truman.
Truman, yeah, the president.
Mm-hmm.
So what, did you ever find out what his reasonings were?
Well, he was being insubordinate to Truman and...
MacArthur wanted to handle it this way, and Truman's like, no, and I guess they couldn't.
And Truman what was it? MacArthur would always he always had press always kind of following him, he would say things off the cuff that wasn't very favorable to Truman. Of course, if we had, as the thing goes, that if Truman hadn't been such a wishy-washy person on his...
Were you going to mention that scene from Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield?
Thank you. I appreciate it when you let me try to tell the story here.
Oh, I thought that's where you were going.
So, no, what I was going to say is Truman wouldn't have been such a wuss. That's what I meant to say. He didn't
like the bomb, and MacArthur really wanted them to use the bomb against North Korea and bomb them into the Dark Ages.
It would have been a different story altogether.
That's why he got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what it would have taken.
And he was very outspoken.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people didn't like that.
That same thing that got Patton in trouble. So basically from the same mold.
Mm-hmm. They
were old Army.
Old military tradition, pre-nuclear war.
Yep.
of course, unfortunately, Patton fell off a horse and broke his neck, and so.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a car accident.
Well,
for Patton.
He did fall off the horse and broke his neck, but I think that he was in the hospital, and ultimately he did have the car accident. I'll have to review my report. But yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's
wow.
I'm going to start calling Bob Serlana now.
Oh! What?
I haven't done anything wrong at all other than try to be on your side, Bev, and make sure you don't get interrupted and so you can remember things. And I am getting the one clobbered
hey, killer.
for
Chill.
being kind to a caller.
Hey, we've got 2 great supporters on the phone right now. Shouldn't we listen to what they have to say?
I know, and I'm trying to support them, and you're the one acting like I've done something terrible.
Look.
And I'm adding them
I
as
love
friends.
you guys. I'm just a bad boy. Yes, he
I'm
is.
adding them as friends in Minute Chat, and I'm not adding you.
Well, it's not like I can't escape you beyond the SBU, so...
Is that like being in the doghouse, SB?
If it means being...
Not friends.
Not friends, I guess I'm always in the doghouse.
I know the feeling.
Oh, you love her, though, and she loves you.
Yeah, we'll
Admit it.
No.
You know, she didn't deny I've always been in the doghouse.
That's because trouble follows him.
Well, he brings
All he
it
has
on
to do is
himself.
wake up in the morning.
Her name's Bev.
See, that's why he's always in trouble.
See, now you know where she gets all her experience and expertise on counseling.
Yeah.
Front line.
Because I need it just being married to him. Oh, gosh.
You don't have to tell
but
me.
I just couldn't get over the things that, we found out tonight that I never knew.
Yeah, my dad never saw combat. He was over there. He was in Seoul, I think, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
A radio operator.
Michelle said that she thinks Solana should buy a doghouse for Space Boy out his lunch money. Oh, out of his lunch money.
He doesn't have lunch money.
Mine's on the back porch. That's my...
Yeah.
There's a dog for you.
Gosh.
That's my woodworking area.
But yeah, and I just couldn't get over, the way they did MacArthur. And too, it's a wonder that Patton never got fired.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, did he?
He got demoted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He was demoted.
Yeah.
Oh.
You spanked him good.
And Bradley was put over him, which if the Bradley tank is named after Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
And if Patton would have had it his way, we would have been in Berlin about 2 weeks before
the Russians. He was always being told to slow down, to let what was the British guy, I can't think of his name. To take
I right offhand, I can't think of it either.
I can't either.
Yeah. I mean, I could see images of him. Montgomery, yes. And they were trying to get him to be the lead on that, so that he, and if you think about it, it's their part of the world, and the British had a major stake in this, and they really wanted their piece of the cake or pie, or depending on whatever you decide to call it. So
and America didn't know about this deal between Stalin and Churchill about dividing stuff up, and that's another thing that was kind of holding it back.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that goes on that they don't let us know.
Yeah, people look back through history, they'd be amazed how many times the United States made a deal with the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, like with Stalin. I mean, yeah, he killed more people than they did in
Germany did.
What's the old expression?
What kind of deal did they make with him?
It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. They just wanted to win the war, and they were willing to do whatever it took.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was before they were done with the nuke.
Now, the interesting thing about our story tonight over this period of history is that right after you have the ending of the Korean War, you have McCarthyism kick in.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
And so that's how it's almost like if you take our show from McCarthyism and then you listen to that after you listen to this show, then it's kind of like you get a nice little segment of history. And then...
it's like at the end of... Oops, sorry.
I was going to say, what I'm getting excited now is because now as you start thinking about it, is that we've covered Korean War, and then you have McCarthyism,
Berlin Wall.
And the Berlin Wall, but you have these that all connect together, and then it really makes sense for us to do a history topic on the Vietnam War because we did Nixon.
It rolls right into it.
Yep.
So...
Because it started by the French, and then we got pulled into the CIA, and there's a whole lot of thing being right there.
I never got the chance to watch on PBS. I never got the chance to watch Vietnam, the film by Ken Burns.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see that.
I liked his.
Those are good.
I liked his Civil War one. It was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, that was really good. It really gave you the feel.
Yes.
Because you didn't have the video interviews like you do with Korea, World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And with them actors doing them letters, it almost gave you the feel of what they were going through at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made it real. That's what topped that out.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident that we will probably end up doing the Vietnam War and, to complete out that 1960s history and
60s was a wild era.
Oh yeah, that's when LSD got really heavy.
Yeah, we talked about that on our hippie conspiracy show. We talked about Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
So these are all topics that happened before I was born. That's kind of why I'm exploring them because I
can't say that. I grew up through it.
Grew up through. Through what?
The 60s.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. We both did, dear.
It's like if I was home and then remember watching TV and they were getting ready to show Bobby Kennedy, and I remember they were showing a balloon go up. Next thing it come across the TV that Bobby Kennedy was shot.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that. I was only just a couple years old. So.
Well, I remember when Kennedy got shot. I was 5.
I've heard the rumors that there might have been some MK Ultra thing on Sirhan when it came to his that shooting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And it's like there's more to John's murder than what's ever been released, and it never will be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when Trump got in, first thing he did was, we got to release all this stuff. Next thing you know, well, we got to hold some things back because of national interest. Like, national interest after, 50 years?
Well, the continuing conspiracy theory on that is the reason why they didn't is because people still, at the time, still were living. And that and it's been said that there's a possible George Bush connection to this.
Well, that's
really?
kind of
I've heard that.
Wow.
I kind of want to go back.
Yeah, because he was over to the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bush was?
Talk about Bush Sr., but I also kind of want to go back and talk about the Gulf War, even though I was well into my 20s and fully aware and awake, and I was there when the planes went in. I was not paying strict attention at that time, and now I've got perspective, and I might go back and try to unpack that whole thing in another history.
That would be cool.
So
yeah, I worked with a few guys that went over.
So
and I was going to tell you when we start talking about Q, I have an uncle my Uncle Junior. And a lot of people don't know this, but the American flag that they got that statue and picture of, the soldiers with it.
Mm-hmm.
You mean the one where they're raising the flag at Iwo Jima?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're raising the flag.
Her uncle was in the original group.
Oh, really?
And they got shot. They all got shot, and he was killed. And so they had to do another one.
No, there's a little different. I think you're in one of them deals where the story got embellished.
What do you mean?
Because they raised the original flag.
Right.
But it was small, so they redid it with a larger flag later.
Yeah.
To make it more impressive for the press.
But he did get killed in two, though.
Yeah, he was in Iwo Jima, but...
Yeah, that's where he got killed.
All right, guys. Well, I'm getting the finger from Solana.
I am not giving him the finger.
Oh, that's not nice.
I am not giving him the finger. I would never, ever do that.
Solana, I know what you're going through.
Okay, so what's this finger then that you're doing?
When I do this, I take my index finger and I point to my wrist.
What are you doing? You're taking your index finger, so that's giving me the finger.
And I'm pointing to my wrist, meaning time.
All right, guys.
No, the finger is the middle finger.
A finger's a finger.
A finger's a finger. Thank you, Bob, for validating me.
All right. Flying finger of fate.
Okay, so you were using your booger finger to tell me it's...
We're going to have to say goodbye, because we've got to say a few things and then go.
Well, we do have to say a few things. So, guys, we love you guys, as always.
We love you too. We love you too. And thank you for doing that tonight. Opened up my eyes on a lot of things.
Oh, it's like my daddy, he's got some pictures from Korea that had showed women unloading out of the truck and then load them later. It's like, I never did get a chance. What was the women for?
All right, guys.
On that note,
yeah.
We'll see you guys later.
We love you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's hard to say goodbye, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
But I just say I'm impressed with myself that I got through 9 pages of notes in a timely manner with time for calls. That was like a marathon.
All right, so what else do we got here?
Nothing really. I thought we had something to talk about, but we don't.
So I'm going to make them laugh. So you kicked them off the phone because we had nothing...
I thought we had some housekeeping, but I guess we don't.
Well, the only housekeeping is that there has been somebody that has reached out to us to see about getting on the show, and so we'll have to see if we can go from that. And it'd be interesting to talk about what the kids are talking out there about the flat Earth. And I know you rolled your eyes. And Miss Michelle recommended somebody, and so we'll look into that too. And we'll have a great, fantastic show for that. Right, Solana?
Sure. If we're still married, yes.
So, anything else you want to add tonight?
Thank you to Bev and Bob for calling in. Thanks for Dino. It's been a while. It's always great to hear from you. And I agree with pretty much everything everybody said. And like I said, I hope I got most of this right. It's just what I found out. And you want any of the research I've got, I'd be happy to share that with you. Contact at spaceboyuniverse.com, and I'll email you these PDFs. They're really fascinating. I'd like for you to read them on your own, get your own impressions. So,
okay. And of course, to keep up on what's going on, you can always check out the space cadets who enjoy or are friends of. Or I don't even know the name.
Yeah, I don't even know the.
I know it's on Facebook.
Let me grab it real quick.
And Solana needs theme
Space cadets who like Space Boy Universe.
And usually we'll throw stuff up there, and
then
hopefully soon the next show will be up there, and just between that and Twitter, you can find out what's going to be coming up soon. So, stay tuned for that.
Okay.
And on that magical note, this brings us to the conclusion of our program. We hope you've enjoyed Solana's exhausting notes on the show.
Hey,
and we'll be back.
We'll
We'll be back next week when she will tell you about something else.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Sir Lana. Executive producer is Sir Lana. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Dino, Solars Blue Raven, Patrick Sporer, Bob and Beverly N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Sir Lana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets.